This is going to be a tough one to record. It's not every day that we talk about someone that passes away in the Transformer world that you know very personally well. And this was one of those individuals that I got to know very well because of the Transformer world. And he was very gracious to kind of, I guess, put out the olive branch to become friends. And I think it was just because of so many of the funny stories. Um, Today we're going to talk about the passing away of David Wise, who was a huge influential part of our childhood as a writer. I think people don't just realize just how much stuff he has done that people enjoy, especially if you were an 80s and a 90s kid. And it was so weird I finished work today, I came home, and I don't keep social media really on my phone. It's kind of my own personal rule. So when I got home, I had a message from someone in the Transformer fandom, James, and he messaged me and he's like, I just heard from Audrey, who's David Wise's wife, David passed away. And I was like, oh my God. And I honestly, the way I was reading it in my mind when I was looking at what James wrote, I almost read it that Audrey passed away because my brain just couldn't comprehend what I was reading. And, it was tough to take it in. It was tough to take it in because one of those individuals that I only got to meet him briefly. We didn't get to talk much at BotCon in, I want to say, 2008, 2009. But it was around TFCon that we really got to know each other very well. And I even saw then that between that BotCon and, I want to say it was 2009, 2008, between that BotCon and TFCon, he had lost a considerable amount of weight. Now, to me, it could be one of two things. It could either be someone who really just lost the weight and got their act together, exercise and everything like that, changed their diet. Or it could be, like I always say, the Dusty Rhodes situation where sometimes someone loses a lot of weight and it's because health is failing. And apparently in 2014, David was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he was just keeping it to himself. He kept it private, but he was losing a significant amount of weight. And by the time I got to really know him in, I want to say, TFCon 2017. I'm so bad with dates. I'm so sorry, guys. Excuse me, TFCon 2018 and 2019. That he was already so much of a thinner man than I knew just almost 10 years before that. So he passed away at 65 due to that lung cancer, March 3rd, just yesterday as of this recording. And it fucking sucks. And he's done a lot. Like, for people that aren't aware, so for the Transformer world, we'll start with that. He did a ton of Generation 1 episodes. The Autobot Attack, Day of the Machine, Microbots, Make Tracks, Secret of Omega Supreme, Key to Vector Sigma Part 1 and 2, Girl Who Loved Power Glide, which I have a little personal story with that one, War Dawn, Rebirth. Like, some of the episodes that he wrote became, and what he wrote in those episodes became super key to the lore and fiction that is Transformers, like writing War Dawn and talking about Orion Pax and Optimus Prime's origins, Key to Vector Sigma, all of that stuff related to which would domino effect into what would be Primus and all kinds of stuff later. Not to put aside what Simon Furman did, but the early origins of that kind of stuff. And of course, Secret of Omega Supreme and all of his stuff too. So there's so many key things that we will always have in Transformers that will keep marching forward from a lore standpoint. And it all began with someone like him and his mind. I know for people in the Ninja Turtle community, this is an even bigger loss because, yeah, he did a whole bunch of episodes of Generation 1 Transformers for us, but in the Ninja Turtle community, he wrote over 80 episodes and story edited, according to IMDb, 100 and, oh my God, what was it I read? I think it was 193 episodes he story edited on top of helping with writing. So that's absolute madness. Absolute madness. Like his contribution to the 1987 Fred Wolf Ninja Turtle series is unparalleled. But then, of course, he would do a lot of other shows that I loved as a kid, just as an 80s, 90s kid, like Cops, Fighting Crime in a Future Time, New Adventures of Speed Racer, which I have a deeper story with that one, the Wildcats cartoon, Gem and the Holograms, some Disney afternoon stuff like The Mighty Ducks and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. He did a few episodes of Mighty Orbots and He-Man Masters of the Universe, and of course he did most of the run of Defenders of the Earth, and just so much more. But my personal stories with him are what really make me sad about this, was because it's funny, because even Jaws D, I remember he pointed it out too. Like, I don't know where to begin with. So TFCon 2018, he was a guest there, and when you're staff, you get to enjoy things as with guests a little more than you would if you were just an attendee or a dealer. And so I got to meet him, and I brought my animation cell from A Girl Who Loved Power Glide, and I wanted to take a photo with him with it because he was very integral behind that episode. And I brought all kinds of weird stuff for him to sign. And I brought the first issue of the New Adventures of Speed Racer, the first issue of the cartoon adaptation comic book of Wildcats. I brought my DVD box set of Cops, Fighting Crime in a Future Time. And I remember telling him oh my God, and this is true. I told him that I love these shows and, and New Adventures of Speed Racer. I love that show so much. And he's like, really? That show was terrible. And I don't know if he was joking, but he's like, you're the first person in all my years of doing conventions that has told me that they loved that show. And I'm like, oh, you have no idea how important that show was to me. And so, we took our photos, we did that. It was during con hours. I had a moment. I think at the time I was with James Roberts, and I was kind of chilling with him at the time and being his right-hand man. So I didn't have much time to hang out with the other guests. But then we had a staff dinner. And our staff dinners, what's good about them is you also get the kind of, have dinner with the guests too. They come and hang out. And those are always surreal. And I almost take them for granted today because, and again, I said this with Jaws D once. I remember I was sitting eating with Jaws D, and David K came and sat down with us along with David Wise. And, if this would have been Proto Man, 15 years ago, it would have been like a fan wank, squee kind of moment. But it was just it's just broccoli and steak with David K, and we're all just chilling and making small talk, and we're all tired. But I remember we sat down, and David K was there, and David Wise was there, and Wise was with his wife, Audrey. And David asked me, and he was like, so really, you really like the Speed Racer series? And he was still fascinated by that. It's like it stuck with him that whole day. And I was like, yeah, David, I don't know how to explain this, but in a domino effect, crazy kind of butterfly effect kind of way, I see the Speed Racer cartoon as a kid. I become fascinated with the idea of racing, and because of your cartoon. And as a result, I get into racing, become obsessed with that as a young adult, get into car mechanics, end up becoming a car mechanic of it. So when you really think about it, because of you, I have the profession I have today and the opportunities that I got today and the house that I probably live in today because of you. And not to put any pressure on you. And he just thought that was absolutely hilarious. And I remember him telling me, when the Speed Racer movie came out, the Wachowski one, that he was invited to come on the set, and he got to see the cars and everything because of his huge connection with Speed Racer as a writer in the past, and that he went to the I think it was the Los Angeles Motor Museum or something to see the Wachowski car when it was put there permanently on display. And he's like, when I get home, I'll send you some photos of when I went there with the car and everything. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And you meet people and they say stuff, you know what I mean? I literally, when I got home from the trip from Toronto at TFCon, I had a friend request in Facebook, and I never even gave him my information or anything. He just found me somehow, and he friended me, and then he right away posted on my wall. He's like, as I promised, here's the car and everything. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool. Like he extended the olive branch to talk and want to talk more. And, just he was fascinated by like how much I loved the shows that no one ever talks to him about, because everyone talks to him about Ninja Turtles and Transformers. Sometimes he'll get some people asking about Gem or He-Man, but no one ever talks to him about Speed Racer or Cops or Wildcats or Mighty Ducks or Mighty Orbots. And I love, like, I've said in a previous podcast about how, I love like weird 90s cartoons, Street Sharks and all that. And Cops was one of those that I absolutely love. And Speed Racer and Wildcats and a lot of those. I just love those 90s shows because they're just so kitschy and cheesy, and I love them for everything that they were trying to do back then. And he was a large part behind those cartoons. And he was just like, it was funny because we were talking about how the Wildcats comics, he was constantly credited in them for the screenplays, and he was like, wait a minute, I never got paid for those, and so he's like, you had to make some phone calls because apparently he never got paid for getting all the the writer credits for all the Wildcat comics that he was a part of that he didn't even know happened, was finding out for the first time because of me. Same thing with Cops. DC did a run of comic books based off of his screenplays, and so his name is in them and he didn't even know. And he was a really cool guy. And also, another thing too, being friends with him, I got to learn about how he had a huge love for dogs, and I'm a huge animal lover. And I grew up, for people who don't know, I grew up in a house because of my crazy mom. It's funny, my dad was a toy collector and my mother was an animal collector. And at one point in my house, I had 3 dogs, 5 cats, 2 turtles, and 2 budgies. And it was a freaking zoo. And so I ended up always growing up loving animals. And so he had this beautiful pit bull that he used to just take a million great photos and videos of. And he would always share them. And I loved those photos so much. Him and Audrey would always post those. And they were just fantastic. And he was just a good soul. He was just a good human being. It's very indicative of someone when they go out of their way to talk to you when you're the fan and they're supposed to be the one of worship, I guess is the best way to put it, and they go out of their way to talk to you. It shows that there's something humble about them, and they just enjoy just talking and connecting. And I got to know him, during those brief 2 years, mostly due to social media and stuff and being able to communicate with him through that. And the Here to This News is just absolutely heartbreaking because he was a really good human being and talented as shit. Like, absolutely. Like, it's almost like I'm ignoring all of that. Like, hey, look at his resume. Look at his IMDb. Just go there and just scroll through that and you'll be like, oh, damn, But what a loss, man. What a fucking loss at 65. And someone posted on his wall, why'd you have to die? We had so much still we had to talk about. And that echoes my feelings. And it sounds so selfish, but it's so true, though, where it's like I felt like there's still so much more we had to talk about. There's still so much because he was part of that era, that creative part of that era. And I can't even imagine how the Ninja Turtle community is taking it right now because of how much lore he has infused in that world for them, let alone the scant amount of stuff that I just listed for Transformers. So it's a damn shame, and I'm going to miss him heavily because I just feel like there was still so much that, like we've talked about a lot of people that have passed away on the podcast, and some of those people I got to meet, but you meet them like any one of us that have met guests in the past. You kind of meet them, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. You get an autograph, you get a photo. They might have been very important to you as a voice, let's say a voice actor or a writer, but you never really get to connect with them. And I had a few opportunities throughout the years being with TFCon and BotCon to connect with some guests, but never really anything that goes outside of the convention. When the convention ends, we all go in our separate ways and go on with our lives. He was one of those that actually extended that olive branch and wanted to talk more. And I found that fascinating. I don't know, maybe because I seemed crazy. I know Jaws D just thought it was hilarious, all of it. And I kind of wish I could have Jaws D here with the podcast, because he'd probably be mentioning stuff that I'd be forgetting right now. And I'm kind of guilty of that a lot of times. But I mean, it's such a damn shame. It's such a damn shame. And he'll be missed. And I mean, goddamn. Anyways, let me know your memories of David and all the stuff that he's done throughout the years. Like, he's done a lot of great stuff. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to cut this off now.